Hi, here I am back in my office, and it's evening time, so I'm sorry it's a little bit dark. I promised you that I would share my friend Dexter, who is a taxidermy duckling, and here he is. I hope this is not upsetting to any of you. I'm very desensitized to things that are no longer alive. So this is Dexter. He is my taxidermy duckling. Here. Hello, everyone. I don't have many taxidermied animals, but I saw this one in a shop called The Bone Room, and I really loved it. And so he lives in my office with me, and once in a while I'll take him out and pet it like a crazy person. So I'm going to put Dexter away while we talk about the development of the hominins, and particularly Neanderthals and modern humans today. So I love this sexy Neanderthal picture. He looks, quite intelligent, thinking about maybe his future, which wasn't long, unfortunately, because Neanderthals really only lasted a couple of 100,000 years. Unlike Homo erectus, for example, who lasted several million years. So we'll see if Homo sapiens can last longer than Neanderthals did. After all, we've only been around about 200,000 years. So these are some of the differences that you'll see in the two skeletons between Neanderthals on the left and Homo sapiens on the right. These are, of course, male Homo sapiens and Neanderthals. What you'll notice, for instance, is the average height is a little bit shorter for Neanderthals. Plus, they tend to be more robust, meaning they have stronger and thicker bones. And also, their bodies are stockier. The stockiness of their bodies, and I don't mean S-T-A-L-K like a celery, I mean S-T-O-C-K, like a football player. These stocky bodies were a little bit sort of more compacted and short to keep in heat in order to make it through the ice ages. So, excuse me. Some of the other things you might notice are that they have very large and long clavicle and rib cage, very wide joints, large joints. They tend to be sort of larger overall in terms of their bones in comparison to Homo sapiens. Another thing that you'll notice is that the relationship of the upper leg bone, or the femur, to the two lower leg bones, or the tibia and fibula, is different, right? Can you see what's different about them? That's right. So the femur on the Neanderthal is longer in comparison to the two lower leg bones than in the Homo sapiens, where the lower and upper leg bones are about the same size. Those are some of the differences that we'll see between the anatomies of Neanderthals and Homo sapiens. And here is a reproduction that's in the American Museum of Natural History, which really gives you a sense of the wide and thick bones, and especially that rib cage. This child was found in Portugal, and for many years they debated over whether it was a hybrid child. It had some features of Neanderthals, such as the robust bones and very stocky body, and also some features of Homo sapiens. But it didn't have a chin, and that is one of the things, I should say he didn't have a chin, he's a boy, and that's one of the features that we usually associate with Homo sapiens. So since he was from 24,000 years before present, or BP, he could be either. Chances are more likely that he is a Homo sapien. But now that we know that Neanderthals and Homo sapiens interbred in a large area in Europe and Asia, which is something that we've only really found out in the last decade or so, this could in fact be a hybrid child. So hybrid meaning that this child has parents who maybe one was a Neanderthal of a Neanderthal species or subspecies, and the other was Homo sapiens. So I say species or subspecies not to confuse you, but to really leave it open at this point. Although your book and our materials talk about Neanderthals as being a separate species from Homo sapiens, that is Homo neanderthalensis, it's possible that because they interbred, Neanderthals could be Homo sapiens neanderthalensis, that is a subspecies of Homo sapiens. So the jury's kind of still out on that. And this study, I see that it is a little bit cut off. Let me see if I can move this. Not without ruining it. Let's see. We'll try again. All right, that's a little bit better. So the study in particular that affirmed our shared ancestry with Neanderthals was this one, in which they took a piece of Neanderthal bone that was found in the original cache of Neanderthal bones in the Neander Valley in Germany, and they looked at amino acids, and they found that 88 amino acids in the DNA of these bones had changed since our last common ancestor. So basically what that means is that those 88 amino acids changed from the common ancestor of Neanderthals and Homo sapiens to basically make us Homo sapiens. And it's estimated that today about 1 to 4% of Neanderthal DNA lives in the DNA of people of Eurasian descent. So who knows, you could have Neanderthal DNA. Another group called the Denisovans was also found more recently, and this is a very complicated looking chart, but really what I want you to see is just the two, I'm going to move my cursor if I can find it, there it is, just the two spaces, these 2 points where there is a common ancestor. So this common ancestor is between modern humans and the Denisovans and the Neanderthals. And then we've got another common ancestor here between Denisovans and Neanderthals. So it shows you clearly that modern humans are not directly related to Neanderthals or this new population that we found in Siberia called Denisovans, but we do share a common ancestor. One of the ways in which we look at DNA in order to tell ancestry, and this is one of the ways in which groups or companies like Ancestry.com or 23andMe look at DNA, is that they look at the mitochondrial DNA. Now, mitochondrial DNA is different from your nuclear DNA, which has the 3 billion base pairs. Mitochondrial DNA only has about 16,000 base pairs, and it only is comprised of about 37 genes. Importantly, it's passed from mother to daughter, and there is no recombination in these cells. So the DNA material stays the same generation after generation, and it is again passed down by mothers to their offspring. So you could only get mitochondrial DNA from your mother. So if you're a male, then you have your mother's mitochondrial DNA. And this is a diagram that shows that. So in order to find the last common ancestor of all living women today on Earth, they looked for something that they allegorically call mitochondrial Eve. So they used mtDNA to trace back the genetic line as far as they could to find the single point at which all living humans today share DNA, right? And they can do this as if it were a timeline. And they found that the most recent common female ancestor lived between 200,000 to 150,000 years ago, which coincides with our ideas about when Homo sapiens first evolved. We can do the same thing with the Y chromosome. These little furry things are chromosomes to a very, very high magnification. The large one is the X, and the little tiny one is the Y. Doesn't look much like a Y. It looks like a, I don't know, a snail. But in fact, that is what the Y chromosome looks like. It looks like it's disappearing, but have no fear. The Y chromosome is not disappearing. It's just got the genes that it needs in order to create males. So the Y chromosome is the marker of the male line, and in general, the male chromosomes are XY. I believe we talked earlier in the course about how there can be, and there is, a spectrum of chromosomes, of genetics, of hormones, of anything that we typically think of as marking gender, such that we need to sort of create an arbitrary line to say who is female and who is male in any case, because there can be multiple X's and multiple Y's in chromosomes. There can be high levels of testosterone in females or high levels of estrogen in males. So again, these are generalizations that we talk about, but in general, most males will have, in the world, will have an X and a Y chromosome. So these are sex-determining genes, and the Y chromosome also contains the SRY gene, which leads to the development of testes. So in order to do something similar like they did with mitochondrial Eve, they call this Y chromosomal Adam, again, using the biblical allegory. And what they did was, looking at the Y chromosome, the geneticists traced back all living modern human males back to a single male, meaning the DNA that all people share on Earth that has to do with their Y chromosome, all male people, that is. And the most recent common human male ancestor lived between 120 to 156 years ago. So this means that all male humans alive today are descended from this ancestor. It doesn't mean that other males weren't living at the time. This isn't really Adam and Eve, right? These are two individuals that lived at different times that have continuing lines of ancestry that we can look at today. There were other males and other females around at this time, but for the males, it's really easy for the male lines to die out, or people have no sons, and so it's easier for us to find a more continual thread through female lines because of mothers, right? Mothers are always giving birth to children, and we can look at that mitochondrial DNA through mothers. So the modern human on the left, I know you can't see this in the video, is Cro-Magnon or Cro-Magnon. It's French, so we say Cro-Magnon. The one on the right is a fully modern human, like you and me. So you can see the difference in morphology here. They do have differences. This one on the left is actually an old man, called an old man, probably only about 45 years old, but, you know, old back in those days. Even though the remains are, not in the best of shape, you can still see some morphological or physical differences between the two, from early to modern. These are some famous fossil finds of Homo sapiens, and importantly, the earliest Homo sapiens are all found in Africa, which means we evolved in Africa, and we all have African DNA. These are some human migration routes, which you can see originally 200,000 years before present. We come out of Africa, and probably the lineage that led to us left Africa about 60,000 years before present. That is the lineage through which we believe that all people today on Earth all people who have European ancestry, for instance, are descended.